Let's pick up on the markets now. The local index, the Rand, they poised for an upbeat session. Markets closing in the green yesterday, boosted by gains in mining sector stocks, while the Rand strengthened against the US dollar. Let's speak now to equity analyst at Sentio Capital Andile Buthelezi, who joins us now for a quick markets update. Buthelezi, thank you very much for your time. Let's begin with your quick overview of how the markets are faring this morning.
Yeah, look, good morning to you, Polly. You mentioned the fact that we had a pretty decent day yesterday. Unfortunately, that hasn't really carried through into today's session. Well, so far this morning anyways, our markets did open lower. And I mean, this is a contrast to how the US markets closed last night, because US markets are actually up yesterday. Asian markets opened in the green, but then did come under a little bit of pressure towards the end earlier this morning. And the positivity, I guess, was mainly driven by the fact that the market was a little bit optimistic about the fact that we could see a de-escalation of the conflict that we're currently seeing out in Gaza and Israel. And this is off the back of Joe Biden planning a trip to go to Israel. So that optimism seems to have died down somewhat a little bit as we look at our markets this morning in the red.
Yeah, let's talk company news. Zeda Investments publishing results for the 6 months, which ended on the 31st of August 2023, and that includes a special dividend declaration. How did they fare?
Yeah, look, shareholders will always welcome a special dividend, so I'm sure Zeda shareholders are happy with that announcement. The share price, if I look at it this morning, was up about 3%. So again, like I said, shareholders are relatively happy. The result in itself, look, Zeda is an investment company that invests in underlying businesses. So one of the more important metrics to look at here is what they call their net asset value per share. And if you look at what they've reported here, they've said that that particular number was down about 2.6%. But a large part of the reason it was down 2.6% from a year ago is because of the special dividend that they've declared. So the actual value of the underlying businesses that went up. So that's a positive. The one other thing they mentioned in this result is the fact that they disposed of one of the underlying businesses called Capespan. Zeda is a 93% shareholder of this particular business. So for their efforts, they will receive about 511 million rand in proceeds for the disposal of this particular asset. And this is just in line with them trying to realize as much value for Zeda shareholders as possible. And part of the proceeds, obviously, like you've seen, are going towards the special dividend that they've declared. Yeah. So relatively looks a decent result for them.
Let's talk about Cashbuild's first quarter operational update. That's also out. What do their numbers look like?
Yeah, so the year-on-year number is relatively flat from a revenue perspective. Their sales inflation was at around 4.3%. They've got 320 stores in existence right now, and that includes the 2 additional stores that they opened in this most recent quarter. So if you look at that portfolio, they had 312 stores that existed before July 2022. And if you look at that, the revenue of that basket of stores is up about 2%. And then the new stores revenue was down about 2%. Well, other way around, actually, sorry. So the existing business, the existing 312 stores were down 2, and then the new stores are up 2. If you look at the different segments, relatively flat. Most of the segments are relatively flat, except for their P and L hardware South Africa business. Yeah. So that revenue was down about 2%, and that accounts for about 17% of the portfolio. So I guess that's the one that probably needs fixing. And I guess we'll get more detail when we actually see the results.
All right, let's conclude the conversation then with Sasfin failing to submit its annual financial statements within the JSE's deadline, and now they face a possible suspension or complete removal. I suppose the question is, what happens now?
Yeah, look, so the initial announcement that they made on the 29th of September was that they were going to have to delay the publishing of their results, and this is because the external audit was yet to be concluded. Initially, the results were supposed to be released on the 30th of September. So in that particular announcement, they've said that they moved out the release of the results to the middle of October. So now, those results were supposed to be released last week Friday. Obviously, last week Friday came and went, and they did not release the results, but they did release an announcement saying that there's been a further delay in the release of their results. Hopefully, by the end of this month, and that is because the external audit is still yet to be concluded. Look, it's never a good sign for a company to delay the release of results, especially if they do it twice. Obviously, there's some dispute there with the auditors. It doesn't necessarily mean that there's anything wrong, but I guess South African shareholders should be cautious and aware here. When you look at what it means for them and their listing, look, JSE requirements do require you to report results, I think a maximum of 3 months after the particular reporting period, and then they give you another month just for grace. Beyond that 4-month period, you do start to get into trouble with them. And if they do fail to release by the end of this month, the JSE would then have to start getting involved in some of the conversation and potential penalties. So yeah, hopefully for their sake and for their shareholders' sake, they do manage to release by the end of this month. But yeah, very much a story that we'll be watching very closely. Yeah.
Exactly. We'll have to wait and see what happens now. Andile Buthelezi, thank you very much for that markets update. Equity analyst at Sentio Capital.